All right, Mari, got a question for you. So we do a lot of project-based kind of work. How do you think about managing your energy over the course of a project? Have you gotten it wrong? Do you know what works for you now? Have you seen people, get it wrong themselves? I think a lot of people who are starting something new don't understand that there's not an unlimited tank, and either for the idea or for an actual just a piece of work. So feel free to talk to any of that or just a piece of it.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Far out. The number of times I've got it wrong, it's too many times, that more times than I care to admit. But I think one of the most famous sayings in startup or tech land is fail fast, right? I think whether or not you agree with the idea of failing fast or sort of blowing stuff up, I think failure can mean so many different things to different people. And like, if you get it right first time, that might feel awesome, but like it's really hard to replicate. Whereas when you get your energy wrong, or when you do something wrong over and over, maybe that's why I enjoy helping other people figure stuff out, because I feel like, oh man, I can really see that. I recognize my own failure and happening in you right now. As far as actual energy management, one of the traps that you fall into early on, particularly in working in creative industries, but I would say in a lot of brain space, portfolio type work, is that you need to be in a certain mood in order to create. And that is, to a certain extent, that's absolutely true. Like, I prefer to be in a certain mood to create. It feels nice. It feels nice to be, listening to the rain and, slightly miserable. Like I can create a certain kind of mood, or maybe my work comes across as slightly more poignant or important when I'm in that mood. But the thing that you come to learn doing this as a career, and that goes for anyone who wants to create a new project and run it long term like a business, is you've got to be in a practice of doing it. You have to be able to manage your energy on a daily basis. You've got to be able to get in and do it on the days that you absolutely could not care less about your company. You just hate everything about startup land, or your investor seems like a wanker, or your kids are acting like idiots. Like, all of that is true for everyone, all the time. And that's why we so often say right up at the start, with a new client or new founder, like, do you really care about this problem? Because if you don't, I mean, it's fine. Like, it might seem like a really amazing problem space, and it probably is. But if you don't really care about solving it, how on earth are you going to manage your emotions? How on earth are you going to drag yourself out of bed when stuff gets tough? And that might not be for a year. You might be on just the honeymoon run, and you just, love the actual problem solving process, and you just, love doing that. But at some point, you run out of steam, and you look down and go, why on earth did I start building a toilet flushing mechanism? Like, sure, half the planet doesn't have flushing toilets, so it's a really great problem space. But if you don't really care about shit, then why on earth have you built your entire life around dealing with shit?
Yeah, no, totally agree. There was a time in my history where a lot of people were asking me when I would build my own startup, and I kept responding with, like, when I have an idea that I feel like I could be excited about for longer than 5 years. Because, like, I mean, 5 years is still a really short horizon in startup land. Like, but like if things go well and you hope that they do, it's a longer journey. The other thing you were saying, you need to be in a certain mood, but eventually that becomes a preference because you're just in the practice of showing up. I think there's also a lot you can do in creating the mood by just like setting up your circumstances. I think we talked about it in a previous episode, but also just in setting up the work, the way you do the work. Like personally, I find if I'm doing a project that's longer than 6 months a year, it may not be a good fit for me, just because I know that like that doesn't that may not work in terms of like how I like the kind of thing that works for me. Man, that was a long way to say that. Are there any things you do in terms of setting up your circumstances, but even projects, to make sure that they vibe with how you work?
Absolutely. One of the sexiest ideas, like in my mind, like one of the coolest, like some people think that, like smoking looks cool, or, some people think like a really tall, amazing basketball player is just like their idea of, super sexy. To me, someone who can draw, someone who gets to draw out their ideas, or just doodle on a like come up with ideas visually, like it's just the coolest thing to me. I enjoy it personally, but I really admire people who are good at drawing, and I'm not. So one thing that I've just really focused on for many years is always trying to have a pen and paper, or these days an iPad with my Apple Pencil near me, because I find that just having that visual cue, or the access to be able to draw, sparks off more creative thinking, because I link it to this idea that, oh man, if I was cool, I could draw. People who can draw are cool, and I don't know, like there's just something about that sense. I'm not very, I enjoy speaking, but I don't enjoy writing. I'm not a big reader. Whereas I think visually, I love to draw things down, and just always having it there means that if I spark off an idea, I might just draw a circle. Like it doesn't have anything to do with the idea, but it's the process of getting that straight from my brain down through my arm and onto a piece of paper or whatever, seems to, I don't know, get me in the zone.
Yeah, there's so much in that. So like firstly, having a visual trigger for a certain state that you want, and like you've keyed this whole thing of, if I grab a pen and paper, or if I grab my Apple Pencil and my iPad and I start letting the idea come through me visually, you've keyed that to being cool and like or creative or whatever.
Totally. Yeah.
And so that's
with a really, I want to put a really strong disclaimer on that though, Rosie. We've said this before, and I'll probably say it a million times again. It's not about the app. It's not about the tool. Like it is to a certain extent, and this is why everyone needs to have that, the personal control and really listen to themselves, because I thought that I would be more creative when I got an iPad, but I had an iPad for a long time, and I realized, oh wait, life isn't like an Apple commercial. Like I'm not super, and then so you start to download, this app and this productivity app, and trying to do more and more. But it's not about the app. It's about the process. It's about the practice of showing up and doing it over and over and doing it again and again. Like whatever that looks like for you. If you are going to your iPad and drawing, great. If you're going to your iPad and playing 3 or 4 games, or flicking between, that's one of the big traps. If you don't know where your last sketch was, or your last, if you've got 2 or 3 ideas in one or whatever, I think maybe it's time to start deleting some apps, because it should be as easy, as simple as picking up a pen and just drawing.
Yeah. Oh, and like I'm similar. I'm not as visual as you, but I'm a writer. I have a gel pen that my mom gave me, but it just happened to be the first one I grabbed when I went for like the thing of stationery that's here. And it's a pile, like you don't need a fancy freaking notebook, guys. You just like any piece of paper will do. And the other thing I like about what you said about like getting the idea, even if it's just a circle, it might not be to do with the idea. I think there's something about physically, I don't like the word manifesting, but like letting an idea come through you physically, whether it is into a drawing or into a written word, or into an interpretive dance, if that's your style. Like,
Totally.
you know, and I know a lot of people who will process kinesthetically, you know, um, before they actually like turn it into something. And so, um, yeah, don't know where I was going with that. Uh, so, I mean, we talked about managing energy. We talked about um, needing to be in a certain mood and moving that to preferring to be in a certain state. The practice of showing up, uh, doing what you can to create the mood. So, like noticing what works for you, and then not getting overly reliant on a particular tool because it's really not about the tool. Um, anything you want to leave the people with on this topic before we close out?
I always wanted to get a really good snowboard when I was a kid. Like I thought that having a better snowboard would make me a better snowboarder. And the best advice, some of the best advice my dad ever gave me was, if you get so good on crap gear that you need to upgrade, then you're a really good snowboarder. But if you look pretty crap and you've got all the gear and no idea, then that's pretty lame. And so I think if you can make it work with like just little, I don't know, 3x9 cards or whatever it is, like, you know, it's not about the tool. Like, it's just having access, creating a space where you can just go and create. And for me, for a long time, that was a cafe. Myriad was created in a series of cafes, drinking way too much expensive coffee. But yeah, just start doing it.
Love it. Thanks, Murray.